Forvitni, Skapa, Speki.
Good evening, my friends. Ravinter, your favorite Skald of Cthulhu here on Evil Bedtime Stories, and tonight I want to talk about Hungry Ghosts, the next chapter for Vermis Malum. First up, I'll break down the video, and then we'll get into some theories and explanations straight from the community. Like the vid, sub to the channel, on to the video. We open at a desk in a room buffeted by a nighttime storm, a CRT monitor booting up to the original Game Boy sound effect, so already a great touch there. You can always tell the difference because the color in the advance has a secondary beep where the color or advance comes in on screen. If you know, you know. If you don't, it doesn't really matter anyway. On the desk beside the monitor, we see a sheet of paper with the Vermis Malum symbol chaotically drawn all over it. The screen shows the iterative learning process of a Snake/Pac-Man-like game, with a green snake seeking out a red apple. 4 attempts see the snake collect enough apples that a new icon, 2 arrows pointing at each other in a circle, appears and is obtained. We see a box pop up on screen saying, "Wear your new skin," with a list of choices. We see that the current skin is indeed a snake, with the worm skin below it newly unlocked. We can just barely make out the very tops of the third skin on this list, and it's just so teasing that I can bet someone is going to be able to figure out what it is, at least before the next installment. I'm keeping my eyes open for that. The worm skin is chosen, and the snake is now a binary string, the obstacles of the game space shifting from blue to a deep blood red. The Apple icon has now become the old Mac OS rainbow apple displayed on a CRT monitor, much like the one we are watching the gameplay on. The worm collects a few icons on its 5th attempt, though seems to lose all progression on its 6th, making no adjustments and running headfirst into the far wall as it spawns 3 more times. And on its 9th iteration, we see the worm begin to circle the icon indefinitely. At first, when watching this, I thought it was just some bugging out AI model, but on rewatching this for the video, it seems much more to me like the worm didn't want to eat the apple, as it were, and yet is bound to by its coding. It seems to me that this endless Ouroboros-esque loop may be an intentional choice, a sacrifice perhaps. For what? Well, we'll have to wait and see. There's that damned whistle again, and we hard cut to a grocery store, listening to half of a conversation. I want to point out that the worm bugged out on iteration 9, and we pick up in the store staring at a lottery machine boldly stating that today's winning number is 9. Perhaps there is a connection here. Lawrence moves through a freezer section in the store, the camera work making it look confusing and maze-like. The footage is roughly edited, and we hear Lawrence talking with someone about his difficulty with jumping to conclusions, and how credible he sounds when he talks to people. It definitely seems like this is in reference to him trying to talk about what he's been experiencing. There's some theory crafting here we'll get into later, but I want to point this motif out. the hopelessness and doubt he feels, all the while attempting to remain level and cordial with the people he speaks to. While looking at birthday cards for dads, he asks how he's supposed to tell the difference. And through the context, it seems like he may have been asking how to tell reality and imagination apart. He says he's trying to stick to what we glean is a program he agreed to. Perhaps he's talking with a therapist, and he says he's doing the exercises. He could just be going to the gym, but maybe he's been taught some mental exercises to ground himself in reality. The camera lingers on Act 2 Butter Lovers Popcorn, and I think it fits really, really nicely as an actual label for this, the second major installment of the series, right? We watch the popcorn cook, and he talks about his ear and how he, quote, misremem, and then he cuts himself off and continues, I don't know if it's forgetting, before it cuts away. The worm that has infected him is starting to eat away his memories. It seems like this process is making him erratic in behavior and unreliable in thought. It makes me wonder if this is possession territory or more like food for the pupae, you know? I also find the word choice here very interesting. The fact that he stops himself from saying misremembered, and then he also follows it up with, I don't know if it's forgetting. So to me, this phrasing belies extensive conversations with someone who does not believe what he is saying, and someone that is trying emphatically to convince him that the lines of his reality are beginning to blur, and that the fact that he stops himself mid-word means that either he's starting to believe this person, ostensibly his therapist, perhaps he very much wants to believe them, but I think that he doesn't. I don't think he really does. I think that what he's doing is playing a part in this moment, you know what, this person doesn't like it when I call it misremembering or forgetting, you know, because that's some kind of acknowledgement that it actually happens, whereas this person most likely thinks, you know, what do you mean you're delving into a game that doesn't exist that's taking you through the 9 levels of hell? Like, yeah, I could kind of see how telling someone about that shit, they might be like, okay, buddy. Hey, why don't we talk about literally anything else for the rest of time? The camera cuts to a zoom in of some flies on a window, and we hear underwater gurgling noises in the background as he says he understands from their perspective how he sounds, which leads me to believe, again, he's been trying to talk to someone about what he's been experiencing. Then, so faint, I only caught it through the subtitles, he says, this isn't about that. And I really want to stress just how faint it actually is when you listen to the actual video. Without subtitles, I mean, Wendigoon teaches you right. When you're dealing with any of these things, you have to put the subtitles on. And I do think the reason why I think that that's significant, I think that this isn't about that. Man, there's a number of things, there's a number of topics that it could be in reference to, and we will get into more of those topics later on in the video. I think that very specifically, this could be in relation to one of 3 things, right?
Hey guys, Ravinter the editor here, and I realized that I actually started spewing crystalline idiocy from my fat mouth while I was talking here. So you're going to hear me say that there are 3 things that something could be. You think that I would pay enough attention to myself, but I can't be bothered. It was just stupid. But you're essentially going to hear me say something about Lawrence, the loss of Lawrence's dad. And I do want to clarify that at this point, while it is pretty widely accepted that Lawrence is experiencing some kind of loss, we don't know what specific shape that loss is coming in. In fact, at this point, there are about the 2 strongest theories is that this woman that Lawrence has been interacting with could either be his wife and they're dealing with the loss of their child, Or perhaps it is his sister and they're dealing with the loss of their father. It's up to you, and as the video progresses, you'll see some more of the evidence that I've been able to collect and some of the community members have been able to put out there for everyone to try and piece this together. But I felt pressured to cut in and just really head off my idiot. I mean, I'm still going to play out all of the stupid shit that I said just because I think it's funny, but I thought that I owed it to all of you guys to clarify beforehand. So anyway, thanks for watching.
I think the reason why I think of that significant, I think that this isn't about that. Man, there's a number of things, there's a number of topics that it could be in reference to, and we will get into more of those topics later on in the video. I think that very specifically, this could be in relation to one of three things, right? Either one, his relation, the loss that Lawrence feels from his father. Number two, the relationship that has become so increasingly strained between he and this other person in his life. We'll get into that a little bit later on. But then also it could be directly relating to the stories about his delving into Vermis Malum. Like this right here, this isn't about that. That phrase right there is actually like beautifully tied into what's going on, and it can end up giving a lot more weight to the sparse little scraps that we have. And it's just fascinating to me that without subtitles you miss it completely, you know. But anyway, we cut to a zoom in of a black cat with him saying that he dreams about the 24th a lot, how it rained so much while in the car, and how he's glad it doesn't rain as much anymore. He says that she's still in Seattle, alluding that they don't speak much anymore. He explains that they make these videos for each other, while the Twilight Zone Season 2 premiere episode King 9 Will Not Return plays on a TV screen. Quickly, the episode starts with Rod Serling's classic style. This is Africa, 1943. War spits out its violence overhead, and the sandy graveyard swallows it up. Her name is King 9, B-25, medium bomber, 12th Air Force. On a hot, still morning, she took off from Tunisia to bomb the southern tip of Italy. An errant piece of flak tore a hole in the wing tank, and, like a wounded bird, this is where she landed, not to return on this day or any other day. And the general plot, about halfway through, I decided to step into a shit Rod Serling impression. But you know what? That's what we got, so we're going with it. Don't worry, there's a reason why I'm walking you through all this. But the general plot for the story is that it's World War II, and the King 9, a B-25 Mitchell bomber, has crashed in the desert. Captain James Embry finds himself stranded, alone except for the wreckage and the mystery of what happened to his crew, all of whom have disappeared. The movement of the plane in the wind and his visions of the missing men serve to heighten Embry's disorientation. While searching for his crew, Embry finds the grave of one of his men and recognizes in the sky Navy F-9F Cougar jets, which are impossible for 1943. He's bewildered as to how he knows about jet aircraft and becomes increasingly distressed. Embry collapses in the sand, and it's revealed that he is apparently hospitalized and suffering hallucinations 17 years after the crash. Confident that Embry will recover, two doctors discuss their speculation that his suffering has been triggered by a newspaper headline. The paper has reported the desert discovery of the long-lost King 9, which had not returned to base from a wartime mission in 1943. Having come down with a fever just before he was to board the ill-fated flight, Embry had been replaced on the mission by another captain. Seeing the headline has triggered survivor guilt, the intensity of which has caused him to imagine himself at the crash site. The doctors assure Embry he has returned to the site only in his mind. However, when a nurse handing his clothes accidentally turns one of his shoes on its side, sand spills out. The closing narration follows. Enigma buried in the sand, a question mark with broken wings that lies in silent grace as a marker in the desert shrine. Odd, how the real consorts with the shadows, how the present fuses with the past. How does it happen? The question is on file in the silent desert, and the answer? The answer is waiting for us in the Twilight Zone. Ah, man, Rod Serling was the best. Fucker had to smoke 2 packs a day until his heart gave out, man. What a fucking workhorse, I'll tell you. There's a strong allusion to the ephemerality of the seam between dream, reality, and game in this series. Crucially, the scene we see being played is the revelation scene, where Embry wakes up. As our main character describes knowing the difference between what you feel and what is actually happening, we see a reveal from the Twilight Zone episode. A newspaper showing that Embry's World War II bomber was found in the desert intact. Lawrence, much like Embry, is experiencing a spatial temporal distortion, with those around him thinking he's just simply going crazy.
Sorry, could you say that again, please? There's something wrong with the audio for me. You sound all crunchy. Yeah. Look, I get it. I mean, I don't believe me sometimes. You know, there have been so many times the past couple of years where I was sure that, you know, things were going one way, and I know that I don't even know what conclusion I would jump to. I'm not saying necessarily that it means anything. It's just, at least it is weird, right? But how are you supposed to tell the difference? I mean, I'm trying to. I read the book. I still do the exercises. I don't always, but most days. Some days. And it's not just like, it's not one thing. Like, even forget this for a second. There's, like, I was talking about my ear, and, like, I keep, like, I don't know if it's forgetting or... I get, like, from your perspective, how it sounds. The 24th. I dream about it a lot. Being in the car. It was raining really hard. I'm glad it doesn't rain that much anymore. No, she's still in Seattle. No. Well, I mean, sometimes, but not usually. We make these videos for each other, actually. Yeah, she is. Well, technically it's called film and mixed media. It's been a couple of weeks since I heard back. I honestly don't know. I thought so. But that's the thing, right? There's what you feel, and then there's what's actually happening. I don't know. Maybe I totally misread things. What, like spam filters? I mean, not really. Oh, yeah, I did. No, so I didn't actually send it, but I wrote it in a notepad. It's saved on my computer. I almost did. No, I kind of still do, but I don't know if it's a good idea anymore. I mean, if she wants to, she'll let me know. There's still time. But I was thinking about it. I mean, I'll keep doing things normally for now. If you think it helps, it does help. Even if it ends up being just for me. But if it doesn't end up working out, I'll respect that. It just really seemed like things were getting better. Yeah, exactly. But it's like you said, right? Everyone handles loss differently.
Lawrence's conversation has a very strong therapeutic vibe to it, as I said before, echoing the scene of the doctors walking Embry down a hall, silently reassuring him that everything he experienced was a dream or a hallucination. Lawrence says, most likely in reference to sending what may be an apology, that he isn't sure if it's a good idea anymore, saying if she wants to, she'll let him know. I've seen arguments for the she being a girlfriend or also his sister, so keep that in mind for now, and we will touch on that a little bit more later on in the video. We watch Embry's shoes tip over, dumping out the sand inside as Lawrence says he'll stick to the plan, even if it ends up being just for him. He says it seemed like things were getting better, but that it's just like the person on the other end of the line said. Everyone deals with loss differently. The Twilight Zone episode ends with a shot of the intact World War II bomber out in the desert, and Embry holding a handful of sand. Okay, so far it seems like the videos he's been making have been a way to deal with the shared loss of someone in both his and her life. It could be that she is his significant other who perhaps was pregnant and lost the baby, explaining why he lingered on the dad birthday cards earlier, or perhaps she is his sister and they lost their father. I'm personally leaning more toward significant other, if only for Lawrence's word choice of, if it doesn't end up working out, I'll respect that. I just read that as trying to save more of like a husband and wife relationship. You know what I mean? We do also have pure confirmation that what in the first few videos seemed like mutual contact back and forth was not. And that she doesn't even really want to talk with him at all. A beat of silence on a black screen, and we're back to the Vermis Malum boot screen. We see that Lawrence's save file places him at ring 7, with a pitchfork, what could be the symbol for Neptune, and a fly. We see him hover his cursor over the delete button, decide against it, and load his save. The loading screen gives us a quote by Ted Leo and the Pharmacists. "Call your friends 'cause we've forgotten what it's like to eat what's rotten." Now, what's interesting is that this is actually a line from a song called Me and Mia. And I was looking through the lyrics and I found the chorus. So this is a snippet from the chorus, and the full chorus goes, fighting for the smallest goal to get a little self-control. I know how hard you try, I see it in your eyes. Call your friends, 'cause we've forgotten what it's like to eat what's rotten. And what's interesting is this next little bit, the finishing bit of the chorus. Call your friends, 'cause we've forgotten what it's like to eat what's rotten. What's eating you alive might help you to survive. This is really interesting. Wow, this is really, really interesting. Man, I love this series. Okay, so Ted Leo and the Pharmacists, Me and Mia. This is a song about a young girl's struggles with bulimia, anemia, and anorexia. Mia, in the song Mia, is bulimia, Anne is anemia, and Anna is anorexia. That is absolutely fascinating, and it's really interesting how it's tied into this game in general. I mean, we see these overarching motifs of gluttony and never-ending cycles, and it's so fascinating. Man, this series was put together with such love. I really hope I'm not just shitting all over it by making videos about it. Oh no. Hopefully I'm doing some bit of justice to it. The jaunty singer telling us to open up our hearts and let the sun shine in paints a strange contrast to the rusting interior and dingy, cold lighting of the storefront beyond the doors. We see a heater on a table start up on its own with a curious element on its face. To me, this looks like it may be, I don't know, some kind of a waveform, although it looks way too uniform to be anything, but perhaps it's something to consider for all of you ARG chasers out there. Lawrence picks up a burnt note labeled Algol and Alfeca, which reads, 7. And fleeing from the labyrinth found fair Ariadne small reprieve, her Theseus no more around, but in his stead a great pale steed. The rider bears his trophied scales, the serpent quaff, eyes dreadful discs, and from that hungry gaze prevails the venom, and the rest is burnt away. I'll have more on this after we've walked through Hungry Ghosts, so just keep that in mind. Lawrence moves on, opening a door to what is called the Frozen Isles. I want to note what looks like blood here in the window on the door, and the buzzing noise that we hear as the door is opened.
I should have a lot more than 99 coins, shouldn't I? Maybe less.
We see what looks like a store at night, lit only by bright neon blue lights. There's what seems to be a large tentacle lying on the ground with a spear, labeled the Cobalt Fork, sticking out of it. When Lawrence picks up the Cobalt Fork, the tentacle retreats back into the darkness. In his inventory, the Cobalt Fork is given the description 3 prongs, still slick with blubber. A must-have for the itinerant seafoodie. We also see that Lawrence does still have his golden shovel, as well as 99 coins, his iron knife, and 7 apples. It seems to me that he has as many apples as the layer he is on, though that's just light speculation. Lawrence remarks that he should have much more than 99 coins, and walks further into the area. We see that outside there is a raging snowstorm, thick crystals of ice clinging greedily to the window panes. A sideways wind throwing angry blobs of snow into the night. The store somehow feels even colder, filled with freezer aisles like we saw at the beginning, only a labyrinthine mockery ripped from a nightmare. The air itself is thick and black, the heavy blue fluorescent lighting doing little to hold back the frozen ink. It seems like the entire store is just a maze of freezer shelves, casting a very thick, dreamlike robe on the series. With the Twilight Zone episode, Lawrence's conversation, and the fact that it seems the game is now mimicking Lawrence's memories, as if what we are seeing were his subconscious mind processing his day in real time, are masterful touches for the story. As Lawrence takes a closer look out the frozen window, I want to point out that there is obviously someone or something moving out in the parking lot. Lawrence moves further along the hall when a squeaking noise, like someone turning a rusty flywheel, draws his attention away from the windows. He notices an open freezer door, finding a bag of Mondvale Preps brand sour grapes for the low price of free coins. For those who aren't familiar, sour grapes refers to a fable meant to teach the lesson that sometimes people are bitter about not getting what they want. The fable follows a fox who tries to get some grapes off of a vine, but when he can't reach them, walks away mumbling to himself that they were probably sour anyway. I want to point out a few things here. One, this may lend to the theory that Lawrence is going through the loss of a child, though admittedly that's kind of a weak line to draw. Second is the parallel between this game space and the snake game we saw in the beginning. Lawrence is navigating a blue maze, picking up food items. Thirdly, pay attention to what happens when Lawrence eats the bag of frozen grapes.
Just let me finish. I didn't text you anything, okay? I literally have no idea.
Right.
Arthur, how much have you had to drink?
We see what looks like accidentally recorded footage of a conversation between Arthur, seemingly the Arthur from the other save file, and a woman, where she denies having texted him or knowing anything about what he's talking about. She asks if he's drunk, and in the captions, we learn that apparently Arthur mumbles the word radioactive as she does so, and the video ends. This is our first bit of info on Arthur, and it seems like we caught a glimpse that he was experiencing much the exact same thing as Lawrence. It seems that Arthur also believed he was speaking with a woman in his life who had no idea about it. I'm sensing a pattern here. Lawrence continues on.
I can't interact with it this time. What's different about this one?
Lawrence approaches a couch with a phone on it, finding that he can't interact with it this time. We also see that apparently Lawrence is playing as a child, or at least a character that is chest high to a couch, and a cleaning bucket that looks to have been used to clean up blood or something. I noticed that the numbers run backwards on the telephone here as well, and we see a distorted, heavily altered photo of, from the best that I can tell, a table covered in cups and perhaps food buckets. I'm gonna go ahead and put money on it's some kind of food-esque spread. Some kind of spread intended to be food. I don't know if it's going to be such nice things as actual food. It's probably going to be like entrails. If this series is You ever just spiral? you ever just have like the smallest shred of a thought and then just watch it burn and die right in front of you? Man, isn't it fun when that happens? But I mean, if I'm picking up what this series is putting down accurately at all, I don't think that that's going to be an enjoyable picture to look at. Let's just leave it at that before my brain fully melts out of my ears, which apparently it's in the process of doing. This layer's theme is gluttony though, so I wouldn't be surprised if this was some kind of photo tied to Arthur or Lawrence personally that would fit the theme. Let me know in the comments below if you know anything about this one. As Lawrence continues on, we see a sign that translates to chilled meats, cold eats, sweet treats. And he picks up a bag of General Baji chicken. General Baji is a character from Journey to the West, Wukong Lives Matter, also known as Pigsy, which fits the theme of gluttony. When he eats the chicken, we see a low-quality fortune cookie cracked open so we can read, "Your lucky star is winking at you. Expect good things soon." Now this may be a poisoned platitude meant to keep Lawrence eating or keep playing. Referring to the lucky star, this may be in reference to Alphecca from the note we saw earlier, and the fact that it is one of the stars in the constellation Perseus, which is the constellation that was above Nero's palace in the random walk video. Lawrence moves further into the frozen maze, noticing a Scooby-Doo-like difference in the freezer doors. Approaching it, he sees that he can hide inside, and tests out the new function like any good gamer. Inside the freezer, it looks like Lawrence has been shrunk down to frozen burrito size and stuck on a shelf, the video quality taking a nosedive once inside. On leaving the hiding spot, Lawrence approaches a Pac-Man game cabinet in the middle of the aisles. The game is static, but I want to point out the similarity to the Worm game from the beginning. Layout, color, everything in this series is an interplay in synesthesia. We hear the familiar wet squelching we've come to expect from decaying masses in-game, and we hear Lawrence cough, again reminding us that he himself seems to be host to his own worm. Another layer of the apple, if you will. Lawrence turns to his left, seeing another open freezer door, but hears that familiar whistle. The whistle draws his attention behind him to see a large, dark figure seemingly picking through a large, distorted red mass in the middle of the aisles. Approaching, we hear a loud clicking or clapping noise, the wet squelching growing as loud as the buzzing of flies. The massive figure stands up and turns around in a disjointed, fractured way, revealing itself to be a hulking fly-man thing in a security guard's navy blue jumpsuit. It lumbers over to Lawrence's character, and as he turns to run away, we see the massive hands of the creature reach around into view from behind us. The game force quits, and we sit on Lawrence's desktop, hearing a long, heavy sigh and a wet cough. We cut back to his desktop again, with him explaining that he went to get some water, and he shows us that there is now a video in the unsorted folder of Vermis Malum titled Imitation_Game. Lawrence says he had a feeling, most likely that there would be a new video, and lets it play. The video starts with a title card that reads, Field Notes, 11/3/2014, L6, Draft Cut. It's not a game.
So I took a break to get some water. There's a video in the unsorted folder now. I had a feeling.
We see the Vermis Malum start screen, someone select continue, and Arthur's save file. We see this is a save from much earlier in Arthur's game, being on Ring 6 or Level 6, L6 as we saw in the title card, one level deeper than where Lawrence is currently. We see that Arthur's save has a scale balance, the astrological symbol for Uranus, and what looks like a bear or a lion. As the save boots up, we see another quote, this one by A.V. Hugo. Be silent, my darling. You must come. The wind is offshore blowing. You only change your prison dull for one that's splendid glowing. A possible reference that no matter what is done, Arthur, and perhaps Lawrence as well, will always remain under the subjugation of the Vermis. We see what looks like it could be an early version of the familiar elevator car, its lighting blazingly bright, its pixels lazy and tearing into each other with each subtle movement. We hear the chipper song about sunshine and the devil, distorting as the elevator doors open onto a sinking medieval scene. Pointed castle-like buildings clustered together, half-clipped through the ground's textures as if tossed in a playbox by an apathetic giant. A black title card reads, "That's my conclusion this far in. Some kind of fake imitation of a game, like a Potemkin village." For those who, like me, didn't know, the phrase Potemkin village refers to a deceptive facade or construct, literal or figurative, meant to give the illusion that a situation is better than it actually is. So when I first read that definition, I thought of like North Korea putting up fake grocery stores, right? And then you hear stories about stuff like that happening in Russia. Whether it actually happens or not, those were the examples that I could draw on that I had heard in my life. But the term originates from stories about Grigory Potemkin, a Russian minister and lover of Empress Catherine II, who supposedly built fake villages along her travel route to impress her and foreign guests in 1787. Although modern historians largely consider these stories exaggerated or fictional, the term has endured to describe any attempt to mask a poor reality with a superficial display. It is now commonly used in political, economic, and legal contexts. We watch as the character approaches a large golden gate labeled the Gilded Bastille, cutting to another card that reads, "Actions, dialogue, collectibles." The superficial mechanics of a video game are there, some implemented in bizarre detail, but the inside is hollow. Inside the Gilded Bastille, we walk through a tiny, red brick corridor with a gated door of iron at the end, a sign that says "Never Lose, Never Win" on the wall, made to look like a word bubble coming from the chair in front of the gate. We see a 2D CRTV monitor icon with the rainbow Mac OS apple on it spinning beyond the bars. Getting closer, we see that this is prisoner 1500 Fenda Premlov. We read below it, Zenda Ruritania, unauthorized use of likeness, 27 years, lock difficulty, medium. We'll talk a little bit more about this after the breakdown. Behind the spinning icon, there looks to be a figure of some sort, an orangish-brown Y shape with some pronounced nodules at the ends, and a whispery green topper of some kind. The figure seems to be on a base, like a game piece, and seems vaguely tree-like, though I wouldn't discount perhaps an artistic brain and nervous system. The next title card reads, "I'm fairly convinced at this point that this is the genuine Vermis Malum, if that distinction even means anything. It's too weird and elaborate, but that just goes back to the same question. No dev, techie, digital footprint matching any of the first 15 or so credited developers. We'll run the rest later, but not holding my breath. Most names pretty obviously fake." We go back to the Vermis Malum boot screen and watch as the credits are selected. We see that the audio lead for Vermis Malum was Mona Del Verp with audio engineer Rodman Veppel, who aren't real people. The next card says, "Evidence of real people involved in development somewhere along the way, though. Voice acting for one." And we cut to a scene reminiscent of Nero's palace.
Une sacrée fête. Rules be the thrifty golden chains which set men free. Say corpulent judges and lapdog prosecutors. Flowery type. It will not spare them the razor. Say I, the law is not mocked. Restons-en là. Plainly, monsieur, it repulses me, this zoo, this prison, whatever you want to call it. It's the smell, if there is such a thing. Mais il n'y a pas de choix. Freedom is an idiot word. God alone is free, maybe. While we are under his earth, we still have debts to be settled. You may go. But remember, confine yourself to the golden rule and sterling conduct, or confine yourself to an iron cell. All carnage weighs equal here. Enjoy the tour.
Arthur stands in front of a golden desk, looking at a telephone flanked by golden statues of a bison and a teddy bear. We see a dialogue box telling us the French woman speaking is called Ava the Keeper, and that her icon is that of the bear or lion we saw on Arthur's save file. Behind the phone, we see golden bars, and behind them a massive, shining being, perhaps a bull that pulses endlessly as it paints a landscape. I think it's safe to say that Ava the Keeper mayhaps has something to do with greed, no? The clip starts with Ava finishing up a phrase in French that translates to, "You organized one hell of a party." Ava laments in English that fat judges and lapdog prosecutors think rules set men free, and literally hawk tuas. She says their flowery tripe won't spare them the razor. She says that the law is not mocked, and that she wants to leave it there. Ava laments that she hates this zoo that is her prison, hearkening back to the quote about trading your dull prison for one that shines. She embraces her inner Agent Smith from the Matrix, saying that it's the smell, if there is such a thing. In French, Ava says, "But there is no choice," then switches back to English, saying freedom is an idiot word. Shots fucking fired, Ava. Freedom's a word for people who don't decide to throw centuries of martial power and pride out the window, threatening the entire world to some philtrum-covering meth head so you can smoke your cigarettes and call the rest of the world uncultured. Eat my entire Viking ass, Ava the Keeper. I don't know where that came from. I apologize. Anyway, she continues saying God alone is free, quickly appending it with a maybe. Ava, even though she's a turbo twat, seems to at least have some layers. What kind of God isn't free? She says that while we are under his earth, there are still debts to be settled. She finishes by saying that Arthur may go, but that he must remember to confine himself to the golden rule and sterling conduct, or to confine himself to an iron cell. She then says something that, quite frankly, baffles me. In this overly opulent land of gold, immediately following her hierarchical list of golden rule, sterling silver conduct, and iron cells, she says that all coinage weight is equal here. Now, either she means she doesn't care if Arthur plays nice or rots in a jail cell, or she means that the value of these materials is no longer tied to their weights at all, perhaps having to do with the very nature of the Gilded Bastille. Ava tells Arthur to enjoy the tour and hangs up. Another title card reads, "Recurring Signs and Symbols." Lots of allusions to other things, but no clear through line. Clearly some message is intended to be conveyed. Some references are obvious. We cut back to the red brick cell area of the Gilded Bastille, standing at the door of another cell. Keeping in theme, the cell seems plushly appointed. Large bed, a rug, couch, multiple chairs, and a fireplace. Yet even though the bars shine gold, they stand strong. We see the cell is labeled Prisoner 0021, Verona Meldpup, Lincolnton, North Carolina, harboring a fugitive, life, lock difficulty easy. I'll note here that someone in the comments did say that these prisoner names are anagrams of Everpalm Pond, with the first having an extra F and this one having an extra U. I think my brain's a bit too childish to get anything useful from that, so that's more for the ARG hunters out there. We see who we can safely assume is Arthur himself access his inventory, bringing out his platinum lockpick. This lockpick is described as pilfered from the Bastille Warden's jewelry box. Precious metals make for poor thiefware. Perhaps this means it might break with use. We also see what looks like a mirror in Arthur's inventory, though we don't see any description. I will note, however, that he is on ring 6 and also has 6 apples. And I do think that the apples are tied to the ring that you're on. I think that we're getting much stronger evidence for that. I don't really know that it matters, but that's one of the few connections that I think I made on my own. Everything else, everyone else beat me to the punch, like way beforehand because welcome to the internet, right? We next see a really great Skyrim lockpicking reference, with the lockpick resembling Nocturnal Skeleton Key, and the minigame very obviously inspired by the lockpicking in Skyrim. A perfect example for Arthur's point of there being obvious references within this original Vermis Malum. The cell door opens, and as Arthur walks in, we see a massive blood stain covering the couch and leaking onto the floor below. He approaches a paper left on the bed, labeled 2/26/2007. It's another diary note that reads as follows: February 26th, 2007. Sick day again. Dad remembered not to throw away the cereal box this time so I could solve it. He was trying to be super nice because I came downstairs while they were screaming again. I don't think they know I can hear them the other times too. Mom said next time I need to just go to school no matter how I'm feeling. This is the last time. I told her I took the ear medicine, but actually I didn't. It tastes really bad and I don't think it's working anyway. I won the 20 questions game. I think I never did that before. Super glam. The prize was 75 pufflies. Leo helped though. He knows so much about everything. We talk a lot. I don't know who else to tell stuff sometimes. I told Leo about the club thing and he said not to worry about me being pretty or not because most people are ugly on the inside anyway. I don't know what he meant. He told me he knew a girl once who had parents like that. I asked if it was something she did. Like, if she was bad or something. He said yes, but not really because it wasn't her fault. The doctor found a giant bug living in her brain that made her act all wrong. Super gross. I said he was lying. Leo promised he won't ever lie to me. Okay, a few notes here. Firstly, this is heartbreaking. Secondly, who is this little girl? All right. I mean, chronologically, it seems like whoever this little girl is, she was the stepping stone before Arthur, right? Most likely there's been other points of contact, but I don't know. Is she related to Arthur, or is this perhaps the child that Lawrence lost? You know, maybe this is like, maybe Lawrence had a daughter and this is what it is. I mean, we see here that apparently this young girl's parents are fighting. It seems like Lawrence has a strained relationship with whomever this woman is. A lot of stuff is still up in the air at this point. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think about this. Also, it seems that she's suffering from the same kind of ear infection as Lawrence. So I don't think there's going to be another happy note after this one. Also, who the fuck is Leo? Like, how does Leo know about what's going on? Why is he speaking with this little girl? And why has she ended every note so far saying that Leo promised he won't ever lie to her? Is Leo somehow connected to Vermis Malum? I mean, in my mind, most assured. Perhaps he's some form of herald, or maybe Leo is the one that facilitates these connection points. Leo is the one that kind of drip feeds access to the true Vermis Malum. Perhaps this interaction with Leo is in the same vein as Lawrence and Arthur's interactions with someone or something pretending to be someone else. Why is this note found in this room by the bloody couch? Not fun questions to have. Another title card talks about the references, saying that Arthur has no idea about some of the others.
What do you think ended up happening to this guy?
We cut to a screen showing something labeled as 98 interview being selected. Pink neon kanji to English translation scrolling in the background. A text box is brought up that reads, M2. So you believe Cyril was wrong then? CC. You'll have to be more specific. M2. You believe they can have souls? CC. I'm not religious. I don't believe in souls to begin with. M2. What term would you prefer? Spirit? Consciousness? CC. But obviously the answer is yes, just not their own. Let me put it to you this way. Do you know what happens to your body when you die? 90 Mondo 2000. This is the second time we've seen that phrase so far. Do you know what happens to your body when you die? I've got some more to talk about with this interview after the breakdown, so stick with me. Another title card reads, if there's some running joke here, I'm not in on it yet. Last thing, took a closer look at the .manifest file generated during compilation. Mostly boilerplate, nothing too unusual, but one thing stood out a little. The description tag usually contains a sentence or two about the program's function or purpose. Sometimes it's left empty, but here someone filled it. And then we see Arthur highlighting that someone wrote parody within the description tag. Parody of what? The video ends, and Lawrence asks, what do you think ended up happening to this guy? We cut directly to another loading screen, seeing that we're back on Lawrence's save file on Ring 7. The quote here reads, I have no use for men who steal and cheat. The fruit of evil poisons those who eat. By Solon. Lawrence loads back into the frozen isles, and we hear the phone ringing.
What?
Lawrence picks up the phone, and we hear from Big Gul P, who has the icon of the fly. Big Gul P says, no offense, but you people all look weird. Melted. In a drunken slur, he asks what he looks like to us, and hangs up. This doesn't bode well. Something about the call, sounding like a butt dial from a night at the bar, is just off. What did he mean everyone looks melted? Was he just fucked up, or is he talking about something more sinister? Lawrence backs away from the phone, and we see bloody footprints leading away from the mop bucket and around the corner. Lawrence approaches the Pac-Man cabinet again, where we see that the red ghost has changed position and is actually slowly moving. Lawrence rounds the same corner as last time, this time seeing no hulking fly monster security guard eating the pulsing mass of flesh left on the ground. Lawrence coughs heavily, turning around to grab the bag of Montvale Prep's brain food for the low price of 18 coins. After munching on them, we see a Mind Floss video explaining how computers learn in 5 minutes or less. Ichthyosaur comments below the video, RIP Mind Floss, fuck Parkinson's. Agreed, my saurian friend. Also, let's keep that in mind.
Learning is actually not all that complicated. Imagine a man sitting at a table, eating plate after plate of different food. Sweet, spicy, salty, all different flavors. Every time he eats, he learns a little more about the world and how it tastes. And he gets a little better at telling what he does and doesn't like, too. Machines learn in sort of the same way. Imagine a computer ingesting batch after batch of different data. Text, images, audio, all different flavors. Every time it eats, it learns a little more about the world and the patterns that define it. And it gets a little better at imitating those patterns, too. Well, the man can use his words to tell us when he's full, but how do we know when the computer has learned or eaten enough? For that, we need something called a loss function, which is just a fancy math name for an equation that measures the difference between the behavior of the computer and the behavior of whatever it's learning to imitate. Think of a loss function as a computer's guiding star, the road it follows to get closer and closer to being what it needs to be. You win the game by minimizing that loss function. As the loss gets closer and closer to zero, it gets harder and harder to tell the difference between the machine and
Notably, the video describes the machine learning process as eating the world to learn it, which I just really love. I mean, we can see just how heavy these motifs are now, right? Like, that kind of shit is my actual juice right there. It also says that while the machine eats, it learns to imitate the world better and better. The threads are starting to get bigger, my friends. We'll start tugging on them in a little bit, I promise. The video finishes up by explaining how a loss function is how the machine learns to improve. What would the goal be for Vermis Malum? What is its loss function centered on? The video ends, and Lawrence runs over to the newly unguarded, writhing mass of red flesh and twisted limbs. The buzzing of the flies grows louder, and the mass glitches and warbles inside its overturned shopping cart. We see the flies are still the full palm icon, and the wet squelching noises pierce the buzzing cloud grotesquely. You can hear distorted sobbing as Lawrence circles the thing, and we see that loser is carved in those strange symbols across the mass of flesh. Directly behind it, Lawrence sees another Montvale Prep's banger, Pig's Head on a Stick, homestyle, for 27 coins, and a disturbing nightmare for a picture of a pig on it. Munching on the pig's head on a stick reveals a child's drawing, most likely from the little girl writing the diary entries, of something called the Orphan. It looks perhaps a bit like a moose or elk head with 4 thin and curved prongs, or perhaps the Vermis Malum symbol set on what might be an ocean. Perhaps the orphan is Vermis Malum, or rather maybe directing it. Lawrence turns away, following the bloody footprints until he hears a deep bellowing coming from nearby. Spotting a Heidi freezer, he turns into a burrito and hops in. Through the heavy compression, we can see the glowing loser and watch as the massive form of the fly thing approaches it. Lawrence watches the fly thing round the corner and steps out of the freezer. He comes upon a Mondville Preps apple pie. Lawrence munches it, showing a text box that says, "Wear your new skin," giving the only choice of yes. We see in the top left of the box the same circular arrows from the worm game in the beginning, and I want to point out here, again, the heavy parallels between the worm game and what happened on level 7. Things are starting to bleed into each other in a really creepy way, and I love it. Lawrence selects yes. Lawrence has now assumed the skin of a fly thing. The screen is blood red. The Vermis Malum symbol is pinned to our view as if burned to the retina. The clicking sound from before starts up as Lawrence moves, and we see the same distended, red flesh masses piercing through the freezer doors like rebellious knives of the dead. Lawrence lumbers over to the loser on the floor, confronting the fly thing from before. It looks like the thing is wearing a suit labeled girl, by the way. Lawrence seemingly destroys the thing, sending a spray of white crosses across the screen. Lawrence stares at the twitching arms of what we can only assume to be the hundreds of losers that came before, while within the Vermis Malum symbol, seared into the center of the bloody screen, plays distorted footage of what looks to me to be some kind of forest or somewhere out in the dense nature. I can't confirm that though. The video ends with Lawrence throwing up.
Hey everyone, Ravinter the editor here again to give some more context before I spiral into gibberish yet again. So far, we've learned that a little girl started contacting someone named Leo and became infected by Vermis Malum. Then, Arthur begins his investigation into the game, seemingly following the same spiral as Lawrence. Someone or something imitates a woman in his life, and he seems to have been driven to drink in the process, as we see from the video after the sour grapes. We still don't know what happened to Arthur yet, but at some point, Lawrence moves into his house and finds Arthur's laptop that he hid in the insulation of his attic. We learn that Lawrence suffered some kind of loss, most likely resulting from a car accident in the rain on the 24th. He uses mixed media videos to communicate with the she in the story, who seems to be in a school for the same topic. As Lawrence sends video updates on his progress in examining the laptop and Vermis Malum itself, he too seems to be catfished. The lines between the game, the story, and what is real begin to blur, and Lawrence starts to complain of an earache. As Lawrence begins to get worse and worse, seemingly beginning to lose his mind by the conversations we hear in Hungry Ghosts, he progresses deeper and deeper into Vermis Malum. The game itself seems to become more human, more real. A cool thought I had is I really hope that the story ends up calling into question our own lines between our reality and the game. That's always the best part of ARGs, and it just feels like that's where we're going, you know what I mean? It seems that Lawrence himself might be becoming a part of Vermis Malum. Maybe the game is bleeding into his reality as well as pulling him inside of its own in turn. I also find it notable that he seems to literally become the monster in-game before throwing up. Maybe that's how Big Gul P, Ava the Keeper, and all of the others came to rule their own domains. Are they the previous winners? Lots of questions, never enough answers, par for the course.
Okay, so what the actual fuck happened there, right? So far, what we know is that Lawrence and a woman of importance in his life are both suffering through a loss. It seems that while making mixed media for this person, Lawrence stumbled upon Vermis Malum and became infected with the Vermis Malum worm while exploring it. While doing so, we learn that Arthur played the game before Lawrence, reaching down to the third ring of hell within the game, and at some point around or before Ring 6 on his journey, began documenting his exploration of Vermis Malum much the same way Lawrence was, though Arthur was specifically investigating the game itself and its history. We also learned that, more likely than not, the little girl writing the diary entries became infected as well, most likely through her contact with Leo. Alright, those are the three main players so far. Arthur seemingly heard of a Vermis Malum game and hunted down hoax after hoax before finding the real thing. It seems that Vermis Malum has either developed a soul or, in reference to what we saw earlier, maybe housing someone else's, like we saw in the interview. We'll get there. We learn that Arthur was receiving texts pretending to be a significant woman in his life, and he learns in person that they weren't from her. We know that Lawrence followed much the same path. While exploring Vermis Malum, he began speaking with this woman in his life, only to learn that she had nothing to do with it. I think this is Vermis Malum, or perhaps the orphan, directly. Maybe it's the machine trying to imitate the world it eats. Lawrence's sickness progresses, and on reaching the Frozen Isles, he begins to learn more about the game and its previous players. We're progressing through a reflection of Dante's Inferno, but it's corrupted, put together with dark reflections of the world itself, a hall of mirrors, ever-shifting position. I think the fly thing is the previous winner, able to lord over the Frozen Isles until another winner takes their place. I don't know what constitutes losing, but I think you become a flesh mass if you do. Perhaps these rules only apply for this layer. We'll find out. Also, it brings to mind, if all of those freezer doors, like I'm just realizing this now, by the way, if all of those freezer doors, after Lawrence becomes the fly thing, we see that they're just filled with that fleshy mass, right, of the losers. What was he eating the whole time? Especially once we started seeing things like, you know, brain soup and pig head on a stick. It's crazy how with these ARGs you can learn so much and yet so painfully little at the exact same time. I'll tell you this much, I'm absolutely fascinated by this series and I cannot wait for more. The last bit I want to cover are some of the comments from the videos. There are some truly brilliant investigators out there, and I want to read out some findings for everyone. Food for thought, you know? At Morgan Fisher 3881 says, the sign outside of Nero says, let those love now who never loved before. Let those who always loved now love the more. Thank you very much, my friend. The work on the cipher, boy howdy, you guys really helped out a lot. And it's commenters like Morgan Fisher 3881 that really help guys like me help to collate this stuff, because Boy howdy, I'll tell you, with all of the hidden little threads in this series alone, man, oh my goodness, a lot of stuff to dig through, and we still don't have nearly as much information as I would want, you know? It's just how it goes. Disc 9225 comments, since no one commented this, I'll take that up. The Pac-Man arcade machine is actually a map of the grocery store, the machine showing where it is while the ghost represents the fly. By that logic, it also means the snake game at the beginning is foreshadowing for the skin change. When the player becomes a worm, it eats Apple Max, or rather, a Vermis Malum, a rotten apple itself. When the player eats the fly, they puke shortly after. I'll let you draw your own conclusion. There's also a connection here in between the pursuit of knowledge and gluttony. In a sense, the more the machine is fed, the more it becomes a human. It started out as a funky and rotten apple in the first video, but now it resembles humanoid parts, festering. As someone commented on here, the game mimics the video our protagonist films. It's safe to assume, or at least I believe it's so, that since the protag uses the laptop, Vermis feeds off of them to grow to minimize the loss function. So my current question is, why does it feed? What is the higher purpose of this game? Its goal? Why does the player get so repulsed by consuming what has been interpreted earlier as a symbol for this game? Great question, my friend, and really great points to bring up, and I'm very curious to hear what everyone else thinks about this so far in the comments below. Non-Servium 1125 commented, also wanted to add the 98 interview at 1408 is in reference to John Searle's Chinese room argument. The person in the interview, abbreviated as CC, is disagreeing with the argument, stating that it is possible for a machine to have consciousness, just not their own. Searle's argument holds that a computer executing a program cannot have a mind, understanding, or consciousness, regardless of how intelligently or human-like the program may make the computer behave. The argument centers on a thought experiment in which someone who knows only English sits alone in a room following English instructions for manipulating strings of Chinese characters, such that to those outside the room it appears as if someone in the room understands Chinese. Arthur is literally in a Chinese room, so to speak, with Chinese translations in the background. The bottom left text reads, "Can anyone hear me?" Non-Servium 1125, you get 10 Raven points, my friend, to go to these lengths, right? Like, this is what is beautiful about the internet. With all of its dirt and grime, you also get people like this who are like, oh yeah, hey, by the way, this thing, this piece of creative art, let me go ahead and tie it into philosophy and the real world history that we're living. Let me tell you why this thing exists. And then also, by the way, let me just throw in a translation for you. Everyone, please send so much love and appreciation internally, you know, like keep it in your brain, because some people get weird when they give their love and appreciation over the internet. But, you know, just let's all have a moment of thank you for Non-Servium 1125. I don't know, apparently I'm having another seizure. This is what happens when I step off script at all. Prenzea says, the code phrase at 2015 says, "You are what you eat." Thank you very much, my friend. Again, any kind of translation, any kind of work that's going in, I definitely think that anyone like me, I mean, my channel is tiny as hell, but anyone who is covering this stuff, you gotta give shout outs to the people in the comments, man. These guys are absolute Sherlocks. Camille Sylvester 3918 said, the conversation at the beginning really leads me to believe that the main character is talking about his sister that currently studies cinema, and they're both coping with the loss of their dad, which is why there is a focus on the dad's cards in the supermarket. It also explains why they shared a house and common memories there from all seasons, and why she ran away, possibly in her studies, to escape from losing their dad. Lots of maybe, though. See, we need more crafting like this, because it is entirely plausible. This is what I was talking about. I actually hadn't, it had not occurred to me that this could be the relationship between Lawrence and this woman that we keep seeing. It had not occurred to me that it could have been his sister without commenters like Camille Sylvester 3918. So thank you very much. I can't wait for the day that I'm pulling these comments from my own videos for help. But thank you. It's very helpful all the same. I very much appreciate it. Jamie7367 commented, at 6:23, so regarding Algol and Alphecca, Alphecca is the name of the brightest star in the constellation Corona Borealis. In Greek mythology, Corona Borealis was generally interpreted as a crown given by the god Dionysus to Ariadne, which matches to the poem fragment referencing Ariadne. Additionally, Alphecca is in a class of binary star called Algol variables, named for the star Algol, aka Persei. Notably, Algol is the brightest star of the constellation Perseus, which was the constellation seen in Random Walk. So I did get that wrong in the last video, but I told you to take it with a grain of salt. So this is where we are sweeping up, tying up those loose ends. That's what you do with loose ends, right? You sweep them up and then you tie them. I have no excuses. I just shouldn't be allowed to engage with the English language, but that's okay. Sgross98 commented at 8:40, General Baji is a character from Journey to the West, better known as Pigsy. Makes sense with the gluttony theme. So there we go. Thank you very much, Sgross or Scross98, whatever it is, you internet names. Raventir isn't that much better, so I can't say shit about that. Oh goodness. Soko Shimbutsu. Okay. This next one is another absolute gem for a commenter. Okay, so at Soko Shinbutsu 6925 commented, in Chinese Buddhism, hungry ghosts are a type of spirit that are created when a human dies who has moderate negative karma, and especially negative karma related to greediness. So for example, if you're stingy or a thief, you might become a hungry ghost when you die. They are, as the name suggests, perpetually hungry, and depending on how severe their crimes are, they are sorted into one of three main categories. Some of them can eat to satiate their hunger, some of them can only eat small quantities of impure foods, and some of them can never satiate their hunger. Not sure if that's what the video is named after, but given the part at 1408, it seems possible. Edited to add, the brand name of the instant meals he's picking up is Mondvale Preps, which is another anagram for Everpalm Pond, but with an additional S, meaning the added letters now spell out LOSS. Edit again. Not sure if anyone will see this, but I was watching the video again and I noticed some more things I don't think anyone else has mentioned. First, the names of the prisoners are also anagrams. Fenda Premlov is Everpalm Pond with an added F, and Verona Meldpup is with an extra U. We now have LOSSFU, assuming there aren't any more. I'm guessing it's going to eventually spell out loss function. See, it's commenters like this. Soko Shimbutsu 6925. Can I shrink you down to like pocket size and just carry around oh, I'm sorry. I think I just fucked up with the camera. Okay, so I was before my stupidity crystallized and burst out of my fat mouth, I was trying to make the joke that I wanted to shrink down Soko Shimbutsu 6925 and just like keep them in my front pocket so they could explain the general world to me. That way I could understand it. That would be very helpful. Okay, so their comment actually continues here. I'm sorry, I split them up in 2 bits, and I assumed that they were 2 different, but they're not. So Soko Shimbutsu continues with their comment saying, second, it's very hard to hear, but turn on subtitles at 7:44. That's right. A voice says radioactive. No idea what that's about. This is how I actually learned about that. The woman in the video is speaking to Arthur. Arthur receives some kind of upsetting text from this person, or thought he did, and is confronting her. I think this is probably him in late-stage game-induced insanity. While I was writing this out, another thought came to me. How was that video taken? Is the game or some entity inhabiting the game able to somehow record video IRL? Was the phone call at the beginning stolen and added to the video by the game? Now, I will say this, that is a great point that Soko Shimbutsu brings up here that I must have skimmed over that last little bit, but I do like it feels like there is an entity that is kind of collecting these things surreptitiously, and how it said what did it say? That it's trying to imitate life as it eats the world to know it, right? Like, oh man, it feels... What's really weird is how are the diary pages in there? You know what I mean? Like, okay, cool. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you're interacting with Vermis Malum and it affects your laptop and whatever. Now it's in your phone, okay? And now it can turn your camera on and off and take, okay, cool, right? But how did it get diary pictures? How did it get pictures like of diary pages? Because those are like scans. They're supposed to be like a picture. Who the fuck did that? You know? Like I could see, all right, we've got some Matrix, Agent Smith is, trying to break out from the Matrix itself, right? Some lines of code that are trying to influence, but how would Vermis Malum be able to acquire scans of a little girl's diary? You know what I mean? Very, very interesting. Broshinsky, great name, my friend, posted initial thoughts. Video game definitely is imitating the real world. The video we see in the beginning is a supermarket, and the game is now set in a supermarket. We are now in the Ring of Gluttony. Main character is talking to a girl working in mixed media / film. Pretty interesting considering the video we are watching right now is exactly that. Maybe the girl is the one who is compiling these videos or putting it on YouTube. It's actually an interesting concept. That hadn't even occurred to me that perhaps it is not Lawrence who is putting these up on YouTube, right? Actually, a better way to put that would be perhaps it is this woman that Lawrence is in some way connected to who is posting it. I figured that it would either be Lawrence himself or probably Vermis Malum, in a very, Poe from Inscription kind of way, you know what I mean? He might be talking to his therapist on his phone. He also talks about loss. I don't know what to make of it. The letters in the blue ink. The child in the letters is definitely infected with the same virus our main character is. The game she is playing is an obvious allusion to Club Penguin. That is interesting. I don't think that I put that together because I don't think I ever played Club Penguin. So thank you, Broshinsky, for the breakdown here. I appreciate it. Also, the hollow illusion made by Arthur is kind of like a rotten apple, isn't it? I'm not precisely sure what Broshinsky's referencing here. If anyone does know, please let me know in the comments below. Arthur also appears to have had mysterious texts. Maybe the game is a parody of the real Rings of Hell, a parody of Dante's Inferno. The bloody sofa in the room he enters when he says some references are obvious. It's similar to the picture shown in Electric Sheep, the one where he mentions about a poor girl. I think we can assume the girl in the letters has died on that sofa, possibly due to her friend Leo. Worth noting the fact that Leo had told her a story about a giant bug being in another girl's brain. Maybe something similar happened to the girl writing this. Maybe there is a giant bug living in our main character's brain too. Also, the Mindfloss video, as far as I searched, Mindfloss is not a real YouTube channel. The allegory of the computer eating the apple, Vermis Malum, whole logo is an apple. Also, if we check the videos of the comments of the video, it mentions about Mindfloss having had Parkinson's disease. Apples are also representative of the apple in the Garden of Eden, the first sin perhaps. There is something here regarding that. Also, at the end of the video, we can hear a vomiting sound. I think it might be from our main character, and it most probably is due to the virus. So thank you very much for that, Bro Broshinsky. Very, very good points there. All right, so as far as the Mindfloss stuff goes, it could be in reference to mental floss. It could be in reference to what looks kind of like a lifestyle guru who put out a book, Mind Floss, Master Your Mind, Master Your Life by El-Qaim Yuri El-Qaim. I don't know, but this guy, wow, his face, wow. that is a face there. Oh, and he's got some floss in his ears. So perhaps that's what that's in reference to. I'm not really sure, but it is interesting that in the comments underneath that Mindfloss video, we did see like, fuck Parkinson's, you know? Very, very interesting. Let me know in the comments below if you know anything more about that. Mika4098 commented, the placard at 16 minutes says, chilled meats, cold eats, sweet treats. At Matthew Fritz commented, King 9 Will Not Return is one of my absolute favorite episodes of The Twilight Zone. It's playing on the TV from 3:34 to at least 5:04. I'd recognize those scenes anywhere, even without the sound. Very nice touch. Thank you very much, Matthew Fritz, for helping me get the name so quickly of that episode. I myself did recognize it as Twilight Zone, but you helped me fast track actually learning about it more by helping me with the names. Thank you very much, my friend. I very much appreciate that. Catherine Ryan 7126 posted a very, very interesting concept here, and I want to know what everyone thinks about it. They say, I noticed a lot of the symbols of the code language looked like alchemical symbols, so I looked into it. Here's what I got so far. A is gold, B is sulfur, C is copper, D is vinegar, F is iron, M is manganese, N nickel, P lead, T tin, and V vitriol. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know that vitriol was a physical substance. I thought it was just like excessive anger and hatred, right? Like I thought that it was a way that one could speak. I didn't know that it was an actual substance. Catherine Ryan 7126 continues by saying, I've also noticed that in the three symbols associated with each ring, the middle one is also an alchemical and astrological symbol, corresponding to an item picked up in the level. Right, exactly. So ring 9 we have gold or the sun for the golden shovel. Ring 8 is copper or Venus and you pick up the copper coins. Ring 7 is cobalt or Neptune, which you pick up the cobalt fork. Ring 6 is platinum or Uranus, in which we see the platinum lockpick. We haven't gotten a look at ring 3 yet, but the associated symbol is Mercury, so presumably we're picking up something made of Mercury there. There do also seem to be some connections to the symbol's astrological meanings too, which is why I included them. Most notably, ring 8 is clearly analogous to the circle of lust in Dante's Inferno, and the planet Venus is named after the goddess of love, and the cobalt fork in ring 7 bears a striking resemblance to Neptune's trident. I'll tell you this, another commenter coming in doing some heavy lifting for all of us. Thank you very much, Catherine Ryan 7126. Thank you. These are some really, really fascinating comparisons to draw. I mean, I don't know that I would have put that together to collate the alphabet to alchemical symbols and all of this stuff. This is really fascinating. And what's even crazier is that they seem to be on track. There seems to be an actual pattern there, which is so great. I love when people just nerd out about stuff and then they find out that there really is a connection. It's really great. Thank you so much. Green Dude 44 commented, the quote at the start of gameplay is a chunk of the chorus from Me and Mia. Here we go. Okay, so apparently I did get all of this, but let's see. Let's see what, apparently I completely forgot about this comment, but let's see what he said. I'm sorry, Green Dude 44. I guess I took this wind out of the sails. I'm trying to save all of this to give you guys some credit. The chorus ends with 2 lines right after the quoted section. What's eating you alive might help you to survive. And the song centers around eating disorders. A lot of the lines are sort of double-sided and give off the feeling of someone who understands their disorder, but is still stuck in a toxic, self-destructive relationship with it. When something's gnawing at you, slowly draining the life out of your body, you can only deny the damage for so long before it takes you. Adds to the pile of consumption metaphors and kind of feels like a counterpoint to the whole gluttony ring we explore in this vid. Really cool that a horror web series can introduce you to a great piece of music. Can't wait for the next installment. Green Dude 44, I agree with you, my friend, and I really cannot wait, man. It's really, I think I did the exact same thing that they did, because it seems like Green Dude 44 didn't know this song beforehand and went and looked it up and learned about it the exact same way that I did for this video, and they've got a really great point. The fact that just watching something online can inspire you to find really awesome pieces of art. I mean, that's a beautiful aspect of life itself, you know? And that's something, like, every piece of art has its influences, and if you dig a little bit, you're gonna find entire chasms that are just barely covered up by the smallest veneer, you know? It's really fascinating. Colwyn says, the prisoners are anagrams of the usual Everpalm pond, but the first prisoner has an extra F and the second one has a U. So guess this would spell something like the other anagrams. As we saw earlier, it does seem that we're building up to the general phrase of loss function. Oyman commented, one thing I noticed was that at 1815, you can see the word loser written in code on the blob flesh thing. Thank you very much, my friend. I will be honest, I didn't actually see it clear enough to be able to translate it. When I first saw it, I saw one symbol, and I was like, oh, okay, that might just be an interesting effect. I guess I didn't actually look close enough until my second viewing and after I had seen these comments to recognize, oh wait, yes, I can actually see very distinctly these markings on the flesh. Which, I'll be honest, I don't really know what that means if those things are losers. I don't know what that means for the series and how I feel about that. Tobias Flenb commented, I think the woman he is making these videos for died of Parkinson's, as there's the theme of loss. He says he's still doing it for himself, and the Mindfloss channel, Not Real, has a comment talking of the YouTuber dying of Parkinson's. Also, the snake at the beginning looks to be made of binary code, and the sticky note in the file that appears says, "Can anyone hear me?" So another really great addition when it comes to theory crafting. Thank you very much for participating, my friend. I mean, again, it's very helpful when you guys help piece this stuff together. These were all comments that I found underneath Hungry Ghosts, and they've, like I said, they've been extremely helpful. Okay, so it looks like Samp Flurgath 7601, that's a great name, commented, everyone in the comments has already said their piece about Lawrence, so I'll give a little attention to Arthur instead. At 7:40, in the brief snippet of video that plays when Lawrence gets the sour grapes, we hear a woman addressing someone named Arthur, presumably the same Arthur who previously owned the laptop and played the game before getting stuck in the 3rd level. In the previous video, there was a recovered note from Arthur about how the game can seemingly grab data from other files and incorporate it into itself. And in the accompanying picture, which Lawrence even helpfully zooms in on, we see that, in this specific case, it had taken text from a file called Dear Rachel. Note also that, in the description, there is a voice acting credit for one Rachel. Putting all these pieces together, I'd say Rachel was Arthur's significant other, and that something happened badly between them before his part of the story ended. In the video, she claims not to have texted him something. Maybe the game tried to impersonate her and Arthur fell for it. She also asks if he's been drinking. It's not hard to believe investigating Vermis Malum could take a toll on someone, and we have no real idea how Arthur behaved when he wasn't investigating the game. Sam Florigath 7601 continues that at 1103, notice how in Arthur's version of the game, the elevator is missing that irregular patch of concrete or caulking or whatever right next to the button for level 10, which we see in literally every other iteration of it, even in the first video's cold open. It doesn't appear to be covering anything here, like a button for a level 11 or anything, which makes me wonder why it's even there in the current game. Did Arthur do something to somehow add one? Notice also how level 7's yellow lighting already washes over the elevator car, whereas in Lawrence's game, the elevator's lighting is always uniform and realistic, and the level's lighting only visible through the crack in the door. Going back to Arthur's note from the previous video, which was dated 10/15/2014, this one is dated 11/03/2014, while his first note on the topic of VM was dated 9/15/2015. I had noted that the screenshot he provided of what appeared to be level 9 was much blockier looking than what Lawrence encountered in Bad Seed. Now, as we see more of his playthrough, we can observe that his version of the game clearly employed a somewhat simpler and more stylized graphical style than it has now. The textures on the buildings and walls look more like illustrations than actual objects. The only exception is the phone area with Ava the Keeper, which honestly looks rotoscoped more than anything, almost like it came from a pre-rendered video. Perhaps the game imitates the graphical styles of whatever other games it finds itself sharing space with, or perhaps as it evolves by passing from one player to another. Its graphical fidelity encroaches closer and closer to physical reality. Whatever the case may be, the game has clearly changed since the last person who played it put it down for the final time. Although, when that may have happened, we still have no current idea. Now, I'll say this, Sam Florigath 7601, you bring up some absolutely fascinating ideas, and I really am curious about this. Perhaps Vermis Malum learns about the games that it inhabits this space with, right? So then what does that mean because Lawrence downloaded Dark Souls? You know what I mean? Like, of all the games to have some slowly learning, vaguely demonic game that is corrupting the worm within the apple, right? Why would you force feed it Dark Souls? Famous for how difficult it is. Oh no. I know it is, my friends. I know exactly what it is. Lawrence is a kindred of rot, and he has learned that there is another universe in which he can become something called the Lord of Cinder. And he's trying very hard to usurp the Lord of Cinder himself. My goodness, that's so dumb. But anyways, keep digging, my friends, and ignore that pain in your ear. Like and subscribe for more. Vitni Miro then.